Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students, in the last lecture we had discussed about disasters and its type and what are the causes of disaster. Today we will discuss about disaster management. So, disaster management needs some steps to be followed. Now let us understand what are those steps and how we can manage a disaster. First of all, let me say you this part objectives of disaster management, this is being omitted. So disaster may be minor or major, short time or long time. It should be overcome and effective disaster management is necessary for it. So in order to overcome the after effects of disaster, there should be management, effective disaster management for it. There is close relationship between disaster management and public participation. Disaster management is either prevention of disasters or making arrangements to face it or at least achieve the abilities to face it. So disaster management is where the prevention of disasters or arrangements to face it is where it is being achieved. Disaster is a fast process. In fact, it is accident. What shall we do in such situation? How can we protect ourselves, our belongings and animals? In case of disaster management, there should be an attempt to minimize the losses. Disasters are never planned, but losses due to it can be prevented in a planned manner. So here we can understand that we cannot prevent disasters to happen, but the effects of disaster can be minimized if management of disaster is planned in a proper manner. So disaster management is achieving or time to time improving the ability to face disasters through scientific and careful observations and analysis of data. For example, preparing the action plan through study of various aspects like preventing measures, rehabilitation and construction, and executing that plan is nothing but the management of disaster. Disaster management can be divided into two types or into two parts: pre disaster management, post disaster management. Let's understand. In pre disaster management, which includes the complete preparation and planning to face any type of disaster, like identifying pre disaster areas, collecting the information about intensity of disaster and probable sites of disasters through predictive intensity map and hazard maps respectively, getting special training for disaster management, people should be trained for that, increasing awareness about disaster management among the general public through training programs like mass media. Post disaster management should be followed. Now, what are post disaster management steps to be taken or the points to be considered? Providing all types of necessary help to the victims of disaster, participation of preferably local peoples who are living in that area saved from the disaster in arranging the help to victims, quick establishment of help center. Different types of disasters need different types of control centers. Categorization of the people material of the help material received from control center, delivering the material to victims and continuous review of the help. Being always prepared for disaster rescue. So these are some points to be followed. Now these are some observation where you are supposed to observe what are the main aspects of disaster management cycle: preparation, redemption, preparedness, impact of disasters, what are the response, resurgence, restoration. These all are said to be the main aspects of disaster management cycle. Now here, what are the structure? Actually, this again is got eliminated, the structure of disaster management authority. This part is omitted from your syllabus. Now here, district disaster management authority. So what is district disaster management authority? At the district level, district collector is responsible for disaster management and implementation of rehabilitation schemes. Collector is planning, coordinating and controlling the implementation of rehabilitation programs, give out necessary instructions and reviews the entire system. District collector is also responsible for designing the schemes of each district separately for each type of disaster and getting those sanctioned from state level authorities. So this is how. Now what does what? Here you should understand who does what. So we have a National Disaster Response Force. So here one should understand what is the role of National Disaster Response Force. It was established as Pre-Disaster Management Act as per the Disaster Management Act of 2005. Divisions of this force are working in Army. Overall 12 divisions are working in the country. Its headquarters is in Delhi and it is in action all over the country with the help of Army. In Maharashtra, National Disaster Response Force is in action through State Reserve Police Force. Personnel of this force have substantial contribution in rescue work in disasters like cyclone, cliff sliding, building collapse, etc. Okay, so these are. Now what are the first aid and emergency action one should take while facing the disaster? You have studied in earlier classes about the types of first aid to be offered to the persons injured in disasters. Use of this knowledge is useful for offering the help to classmates or people around you facing any disasters and injured therein. Sometimes we have to face the disasters due to your own unawareness. Some symbols given beside are seen used around us. Those symbols can be ignored. Such symbols are useful to avoid mishaps. Okay, we have such kind of symbols around us, but we never give care to them. Okay, so we should be very careful. Now here there are some pics given over here. Okay, somewhere the earthquake is occurring, somewhere there's fire, somewhere there's snake bite. It's a kind of disaster, and various activities what it can be carried out in emergency situations, like how you will handle the patient. So in emergency condition, various transportation methods like cradle method, carrying on back, carrying on two hands are to be followed. Those methods which depends upon the condition of the victim. We face different types of major or minor disasters in our daily life. Varieties of disasters like accident, stampede, injuries in fighting, electric shock, burns, hot heat shock, snake bite, dog bite, fire due to electric shock circuit, epidemic of any disease happen around us. Victims of disasters need to be offered some primary help before actual medical treatment. First aid is useful in such circumstances. So here, what to be carried in first aid kit? We should have kit in our home as well as the place where we are working. So it's essential to have medical. It is essential to have medical or the material necessary for first aid with us. That material is also available in the first aid kit. You can also prepare a first aid kit. It is also important to use whatever the material available in the given condition for first aid. So what should have in the first aid kit box? So these are the materials given over here. Now apart from this, one can also go for mock drill. Okay, so what is mock drill? It is a practice to check the preparedness or facing the disaster as early as possible. Virtual apparent situation of disaster is created to check the reaction time of for any type of disaster. Trained personnel observe their responsibilities to check execution of plan designed for disaster redressal. This helps to check the efficiency of the system prepared for disaster redressal. Mock drill is arranged on disaster of fire in various schools by the fighters. It includes the demonstration like extinguishing the fire, rescuing the people trapped at high floors, rescuing the persons whose clothing have catched the fire. Such activities are also arranged by police force and voluntary organizations. Okay, so what are these objectives of mock drill? So here it's first to evaluate the response to the disaster, improving the coordination between various departments of disaster control, identification of own abilities, improving the ability of quick response to disaster, checking the competency of the planned action, identifying the possible errors and risks. So these are the objectives of disaster mock drill, okay, which is carried out. So here are some points are to be remembered. Okay, so by this we have finished the last chapter of your Science 2 syllabus of Standard 10th. So here the syllabus is completed. I request all of you to go through the textbook, read the chapter. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.